Welcome everybody. I want to say hello to the Hayon's Auckland Foundations B class and Watiri's Christchurch Foundations B class. I'm Sarah Penwarden and I'm the Practicum Coordinator for Auckland and for Christchurch, and Sue Grant is the Practicum support down there. And what I'm doing this video today to be able to explain what steps you need to take to start finding a placement. And the reason we're doing the video is because there was a clash with classes, because I teach as well. But I also think it could be useful to have this video, and I'm hoping that it's going to be uploaded onto Moodle so that you can watch it again if you need to, because there are lots of details in what I'm going to say, and sometimes it's quite hard to remember everything. I've also got Jeanette Cole with me today, who's one of our, what should I call you, office administrators in Auckland, and she's going to ask me questions, so this will become more like an interview format. Yeah, welcome again. Just before we begin with that, I just want to say that you should be given two handouts that kind of accompany this video, and I'll just mention those because I'll refer to them. You should be given a timeline handout, which I'll talk about what you need to do when. You should also be giving a guideline handout, the guideline for what placements it's okay to have and what sort of placements you should be having. So that's the second handout. So you should have those with you, and I'll refer to those as we go along.
Cool, so just got a few questions with regards to the placements for you. So the first is, what is a placement and how does it work?
Okay, so as part of this degree, you have to get 200 hours of face-to-face counselling with someone in a placement setting. So once you start in the second year of the program, there are four every semester there's a practicum course that you do. So the last 4 semesters of your degree you do a practicum course, and as part of these courses there's a requirement to have a practicum, actually have a placement. So for example in Professional Practice A next year there's a requirement for you to do 30 hours of face-to-face counselling with someone in an approved placement setting. And in semester 2 next year, that's Professional Practice B, you have to get 50 hours. So these are a requirement, and these are part of the course, part of the professional practice courses that you hope to be enrolled in. So as I should have mentioned at the beginning, this video is for people who want to go onto the degree next year and want to start doing practicum next year. So a placement. A placement is it has to be approved by Laidlaw, it has to be signed up, and I'll talk about the kind of placements you have. And what will normally happen is you'll go in once a week, you'll have a placement liaison person. Okay, that's a PLP, a placement liaison person. They're a person who oversees you on your placement and takes some responsibility for your counselling work, and you might check in with them in the morning, and then they will screen clients for you, and then you will see probably 4 clients in the day, and it could be from 40 minutes or 60 minutes, and then you will log that. And that is, but you have to get 60 minutes of counselling is an hour, and by the end of the semester, next year, you have to get 30 hours of counselling. And this is all part of the practice requirements for Professional Practice A. So you have to get 30 hours of counselling, you have to have a report from the placement, you have to have supervision, which I'll talk about, so you have to log your hours. So what you're going to get, and I'll explain when you're going to get this, is you're going to get a placement booklet. I've got an example of one here. When you pass reselection, you will get a placement booklet, and this is how you sign up your placement, and this is how you log your hours, but I'll explain more about this. Yeah, you're actually going to be counselling people, and this is a key part of doing a Bachelor of Counselling. Like I said, you need 200 hours to get this degree. So, in terms of the kind of placement you can have, it really is based on partly your interests, but partly the usual kind of placements that students get. And students usually have a placement in a high school or in an agency setting. That's usually what happens in the second year. In the third year, they might extend a bit into different settings, which I'll talk some more about.
What's our philosophy at Laidlaw College about placement hunting?
So I think every institution does it slightly differently, but what we like is to give. It is ultimately entirely your responsibility to find a placement. And also we give you help and assistance with that. But we don't find the placement for you, because we think it's really important that as a student you take the step to make the connection with a potential placement. So we do all we can to help and support you, but we don't say, look, here's a placement, just go and do it, because it's important that, that this is something that you want to do because you're the one that's going to be actually doing it. So what we do is we give you a list of potential placements, and this is the third document. I'm not giving you this document quite yet because we're still working on it, but this is the third document, and you're going to get this in a couple of weeks' time, and it's going to be uploaded onto Moodle, and the Christchurch students and the Auckland students will have it. So it is a list of potential placements. So these are placements our students have used before, and I'll go through that. But so we want you to be able to, we'll give you some ideas to start with, but you need to take the step and be able to contact the placement and to inquire about having a placement. But the next thing is that if it's an existing placement that's been approved by Laidlaw, that is fine. You could, if they give you the offer of a placement, if you've passed reselection, you could sign up the placement. If it's a new placement for us, then I have to get involved and actually approve the placement. But I'll explain this in a bit more detail. So to answer your question, Jeanette, our philosophy is that we work together, that the student takes full responsibility for finding a placement, but we do all we can to help.
Just following on from that question, so it would be quite important then for students to have access to Moodle and to be checking it regularly, because at times
completely.
you do advertise placements when they become available where maybe year 3 people have graduated. So yeah, how
Totally.
it would be quite important for them to check in.
It is. You have a responsibility in this course and at Laidlaw to check Moodle regularly, and it becomes particularly important this semester because when myself and Sue Grant and Christchurch were doing placement visits out to all the placements for the third year students and the second year students, we do one visit a year, and when we go there to talk about how things have gone with the student, we'll ask them if they want to have a student for next year, and if they say yes, then I will put that on Moodle for your year group, and then it's a matter of usually I'd say contact me, sometimes you might just contact the placement, but it needs to be, you need to respond as soon as possible. Like, I just want to say that finding a placement is highly competitive. We have a number of students that will be looking for placements in Auckland and Christchurch. Also in Auckland and Christchurch, there are a number of tertiary institutions, all teaching counselling, who have students that will be looking for placements. And so, yeah, it's very competitive. And so that's why we start to talk about this now, to get you thinking about it, because we want a good big run up to when you need to actually have a placement.
And what kind of placements can you have as a second year student?
Great. Okay, so what I'd like the class to do is to have a look at the guidelines for establishing a placement, document 2, and please do read it. It's just really important to be able to so that you understand this. So, the kind of placements second years have is the two main placements are placement in a counselling agency, where there is another counsellor on site who is the PLP, the placement liaison person. In Christchurch, we particularly have a lot of relationships with counselling agencies. In Auckland, we have some relationships with counselling agencies. So that is a possibility, that you have a placement in an agency, either working with adults, or in some agencies they would like our student to work with children or young people. So there is an opportunity to work with children or young people as well. Okay, the second usual placement that a second year has is working in a high school. So, and as soon as I say that, people are either going to go yay, or they're going to go, oh, I hated school, why do I want to go back there? But I think school placements, high school placements can be great. It can be really interesting. Working with teenagers is a real challenge. There will always be another counsellor on site, and this is what makes them a good placement for second year students. So, yeah, have a think about that. We also, in Auckland and Christchurch, have lots of connections with high schools where we already have students. So the other really key point that I'll make is that for second year students, we have a rule that there must be another counsellor on site. I'll say that again. For second year students, we have a rule that there must be another counsellor on site, a senior counsellor, or even just another counsellor, to be able to give some oversight to their practice. This means that second year students can't work in churches where there is no counsellor, or primary and intermediate schools where there is no counsellor. Occasionally in Auckland and Christchurch there are primary or intermediate schools where there is another counsellor. So that is a possibility, even if the counsellor is there part-time. So we can talk further about that. So the other thing is that we do count, sometimes people are involved in therapeutic groups and they may already be involved in this, but we can count a therapeutic group as 50% of your counselling hours, but you must be co-facilitating. You can't be just a member of this group, you have to be co-facilitating, and it has to be a therapeutic group. But feel free to come and talk to me about that some more. I will say in the third year, sometimes people do branch out and have different placements. For example, we've had people that have worked in the prisons, we've had people that have worked in churches, as I said, social services agencies, I don't know, that kind of thing.
So keeping in mind the guidelines for the Year 2 students, and aside from the list of warm contacts, how do they go about finding a brand new placement?
Okay, so I think there are some steps really, and maybe it's time to talk about the timeline, which is your other document, so please have a look at this. So if I go through the steps slowly, first step, doing your CV. This is really important that you do that you redo your CV, and it needs to be professional, and to put yourself across as a professional, a counselling professional. And you could mention that you are in a person-centred process group where you practice person-centred skills as you've been in your process groups. You could say that. You could consider who could be a referee for you. I think our policy has been that we don't ask first year group leaders to be a referee because it's important that they just keep within their role, but that you can ask your Foundations B lecturer, if you'd like to be a referee for you. And it would be good to have a previous employer as a referee as well. You are very welcome to email me your CV to check it if you want to, or email Sue in Christchurch. You're very welcome to do that. So what's important, the first step is doing your CV. The second step is having a think about the kind of placement you would like. I highly recommend that you have a talk with the second and third year students that you know and ask them about what their placement's like. What kind of clients do they see? Do they like it? Would this suit you? I also really recommend that you have a think about the networks that you have, whether you know counsellors or know agencies or have some connections in a high school or a primary or an intermediate school where there is a counsellor, to think of what your networks are and whether you could make a connection there. The two, we kind of almost have two kinds of placements really, apart from like all the different schools and that kind of thing. We have placements that we already have a relationship with, that they are existing placements and they've already been approved. So in about 3 weeks' time, I'm going to put up a list for you of potential placements that you could contact. And so when you get that list, and there'll be a list in Christchurch and a list in Auckland, you're welcome to email those placements because they've already been approved, they already have students, and it would just involve you emailing the placement person and including your CV and asking if you could be considered for a placement there for 1 day a week for next year. So in our list of possible placements that I'll be giving you, we'll have placements that anyone in the class could contact, and that you can just, and then you can just, if you think that it appeals to you, you can just go and do that. So we have a list of placements that anyone can contact. We have a list of, then there's the other bit on that form is we have a list of placements that you need to check in with either me, if it's Auckland, or Sue, to see whether this could be a good fit for you. We have some placements that only want students with lots of life experience because the client work is so challenging. And we can't really send any students there because we've got a responsibility that the student feels that they can manage this and that they're not out of their depth. So there are some placements that we really need you to have a talk with me first or with Sue first if it's in Christchurch, and those placements will be on the list. And then we also have a list of please do not contact. And I have to say that it is just really important that when we say don't contact these placements, we do mean that. Okay, so as a second year, there'll be a list of places that we don't want you to contact. There'll be particular placements that have said they don't want students this year, or there are particular placements that are only for third years because there needs to be another counsellor on site and they need to have somebody who's experienced. For example, like I said, working in a prison or working in a church without a counsellor, that's a no-go for a second year, or working in an intermediate or a primary school without a counsellor, that's also a no-go. So we have a list of, so you will get this list in a few weeks' time, and then also, as we do the visits, we'll put some notices on Moodle, but also, that's what we are doing to give you some tips and things. You might have an idea of another placement that we've never had a student before, and there might be a high school or a school with another counsellor or an agency or a social services centre or something that you're particularly interested in, and this might be a new placement for Laidlaw. So I just want to be really clear about this, that if you've got an idea of a placement that you'd quite like, it's really important that you contact me before you have an interview there, because I need to approve the placement for Laidlaw. So I'll need to double check that they have someone a counsellor that can oversee your work there, that it's not very specialist work, that you're not working with people that have suffered from trauma right from the beginning, you're not working with people, it's not like specialising in domestic violence or something that's quite specialised. So if it's a brand new placement for Laidlaw, I'll need to approve it. So it's really important that you don't have the interview there before you've talked to me about it and I've gone through the steps of emailing them. I'll send them information and then I'll talk with them over the phone. It gets really awkward if students have had an interview and then I have to also say no because it's not fitting within what we think is good and safe for a second year. So please, if it's a new placement, make sure you talk to me first. It's a massively long answer, but there we go, Jeanette.
No, that's cool. So just to recap, so I'm a second year student, not really, but say I am.
Yep.
And I found a placement, sent my CV through. From that point, I then contact you to say, hey, I found this placement, I've sent my CV, they're keen as mustard to interview me. Could you have a chat? Would that be?
That's right. This is if it's a brand new placement for Laidlaw. Like if it's on the list of placements that students have had before, that's fine to send your CV in there and to have an interview. That's totally fine. But if it's a brand new placement, then I also need to get a bit more involved just to see that it's going to fit within our criteria for students as well.
When should a student get the placement all signed up?
Good. So lovely timeline here. So what we're suggesting is get your CV done now, talk to other students in the second and third year, think about your network. I'll put this list out in about 3 weeks' time. Start to contact placements then. Existing placements, or start to contact new placements then. What I'd be really hoping so you send out your CV and email them, and then they ask you for an interview usually, and then you have an interview, and then they might make you a verbal offer and say, yes, we'd like to offer you a placement for next year. So, and I'm hoping that by November, everybody has an offer of a placement. That's what I'm hoping. And then what happens is that you have to have reselection, okay? And that when you pass reselection, after that point, I will meet with all the reselected students. It'll either be me meeting with Auckland and Christchurch via Starleaf, or Sue meeting with them down there. And at that point, after reselection, when we have this meeting, I will give out this big booklet, and then you go and you sign up the placement, and we have all the forms you need to contract the placement, because it's a contract. So there'll be these placement understandings form, which is the nuts and bolts of what day am I coming in, what do I do, and then there's an actual contract between Laidlaw, signed by me, the placement and yourself. So, and then there's also supervision, which I'll talk about. And so we're aiming that you have a verbal offer by October, that by November you sign it up, and then December you go on holiday. Phew, I have a placement, I can relax, it's all good. And then the second week of February, and I mean February, I know that other courses don't start until March, but the second week of February, it's compulsory to attend a practicum orientation day where we introduce you to working in a placement, and at that point after that, you'll need to, on that day in the second week of February, you'll need to have your placement signed up, supervision signed up, and I'll explain that, and so you'll need to be all ready to go to start counselling about the third week of February, your 1 day a week. I can hear probably that people are going to have lots of questions, and I'm very happy for you to email me, but that's our usual process. So it's really important you're not still on holiday on the second week of February, because it's a compulsory to attend this practicum orientation, and really for your own sake it's better that the placement's all signed up and that you're starting then, because you need to get your 30 hours by June.
Cool. So what kind of things are covered at that practicum orientation? Why is it important that I attend that before I can rock up and start placement?
Okay, so just explaining about who the placement liaison person is and what their role is and what it's going to be like, the nuts and bolts of being there on the day, how to deal with any serious situations that emerge. I'm going to be asking people to read, when they get this booklet, they'll read the Code of Ethics, and I'll go through that in detail, but there's a Code of Ethics around how you work as a counsellor. We want people to read that and be able to work within those ethics when they start their placement, so I'll talk about that. And also about why supervision is important. And then that's the morning session. In the afternoon, Jane will give an introduction to working with children, because she teaches the Counselling Children and Young People course, and a lot of people often have placements in schools. So this day that you have to attend is February, but I just want people to know that to plan in advance. So now it's the CV, then it's contacting placements in a few weeks' time between then and October, getting a verbal offer, doing reselection, then meeting for this meeting once you've passed reselection, then going back into your placement, signing it up, signing up supervision, going on holiday, coming back in February, starting counselling February. It's actually quite exciting. I know it probably sounds scary, but it's also quite exciting.
Cool. So what is supervision and how does it work?
Right, so supervision, it is probably it's best to describe it as being it's like personal counselling, where you go and see this person for a number of sessions, and you actually make a contract with them to see them for a certain number of sessions, but the focus is your work, and you'll be talking in detail about the clients that you're seeing and how you're working with them. And then you'll also be talking about some of the ideas that you're grappling with and who you want to be as a counsellor. And there might be times when you talk about how things are for you. If things are tough or you're just wanting to have some support, you can do that. But they're there to help you grow as a counsellor, to sharpen your skills, and they have a little bit of accountability as well. So when we think of a placement, we think of there's 4 people involved in the placement. There's yourself, there's the placement liaison person, the person who is either the counselling manager in the agency or the head of guidance in a school. So the placement liaison has some responsibility. We do at Laidlaw, me as the Practicum Prof Braque lecturer has some responsibility, and also the supervisor has some responsibility as well, a little bit. So there's all these people that are involved in this. And what's really important is that next year you have to see your supervisor after every 6 counselling hours that you do. So it really works out at about once a fortnight, bearing in mind school holidays. So they're quite an important person. Also, like counselling, they charge, and it is an expense. So I know this can be a worry for people. If people are Māori or Pacifica, they can apply for scholarships from Laidlaw. Some supervisors have a student rate that they charge. And also you can add supervision to course-related costs, because it is a compulsory cost that comes with training to be a counsellor. It's not an optional, so you can definitely count it as course-related costs. So what I suggest is that, also have a chat with the Year 2s and 3s about what their supervisor's like. We have a list of approved supervisors that students have used before. That list is on Moodle. You're welcome to have a supervisor outside the list, but you'll need to email me. I'll need to approve them as well to check that they meet our criteria, because they have to have a certain level of experience, professional membership, to be able to be a supervisor. So what I suggest is usually that you find a placement, and then when you know the kind of placement that you've got, then you look for a supervisor. On the list, which you're welcome to download from Moodle, it's there now if you want to have a look at it, it'll say the supervisor, like Sue Smith, and then it will say which part of, let's just say she's in Christchurch and she's in Papua Nui, and then it says this is her email, this is how to contact her. Then it will say the kind of counselling work she does. It might say she's been a high school counsellor, or it might say she's worked in an agency with adults who have been sexually abused. And then it will say what professional association she's a member of. So there you could think, look, geography, having someone who lives in the same area as me, or I think it's really important when you know the kind of placement that you've got to find a supervisor with that kind of experience. So you could wait until you know what placement you've got. And then what I suggest is that you email, and then of course they have different charges too, and that's totally fine to ask if they have a student rate. So then when you know what placement you're going to have, I suggest you email a couple of supervisors from the list, ask them if you can meet with them for half an hour for free, just as an initial conversation, because it's really important that you get what their vibe is. Like they're there to give some feedback into your practice, maybe sometimes give a little critique or some gentle challenge. They're there to help you grow. So it's really important that you feel that you can trust them and that it's going to be a good professional relationship. Supervisors are very different from each other and their approach is very different. So I suggest you meet with 2 people for free and have a little interview with them around whether you want them to be your supervisor. And then if you think yes, then we've got the forms that you sign up, the supervision. And like I said, after reselection, I'll meet with the class and we will go through all those forms. Again, a very long answer, Jeanette.
No, that's all good.
Yeah.
It's probably a bit of a Captain Obvious question, but
Go on, let's do some Captain Obvious questions.
Totally. So I've looked at the warm list of supervisors and either for whatever reason, I don't go with them, they might be all booked up, and I want to find a new supervisor.
Good question.
With the personal counsellor, there is criteria that they have to be a full member of either NZTC or NZAC. I would say obviously it would be the same sort of protocol. You don't rock up to anybody that says, yeah, I'm a supervisor. That's $500 for half an hour session. So there's a process that would go with that as well.
There is, yeah. If it's a supervisor that's not on our list and you would like them, you've heard good things about them, then they have to send me their CV and I have to just double check that their qualifications, they've got a bachelor's or a master's, that they've had lots of at least 5 years of counselling experience. No, they have to have a lot more counselling experience. They have to have been a member of a professional association for at least 5 years and have been a supervisor for a while and have supervised students. So we have a criteria. I can send that to you if you've got someone in mind that you'd quite like who's not on our list. And then I email them. We do a few emails back and forward, and if they meet our criteria, then I can approve them, and then you could go ahead and sign them up.
Cool. So if I were a student, what is the first step for me? What do I need to do right now?
Right now, I think spend some time doing up your CV. If you want to send it to Sue or I, do. And have a chat with any second years or third years you bump into about what their placement's like and what they think of it. That's what I think you should do right now. Okay, I'll just say a couple more things. I think maybe that's, can I just double check I've covered everything? Yeah, just really important, just saying again, look, if every placement needs to be approved, and on our list of placements, which you're going to get in about 3 weeks, those are all ones that have been approved. But if you've got a placement that you're liking that we've never had as a Laidlaw student before, I need to go through the process of contacting them, sending them our information and talking with them. So please don't forget there is an actual process for this pitch. I think the 2 things I would say is this is actually really exciting. Might feel scary as well, but it's quite exciting, this point of actually thinking, what kind of placement do I want? Who am I going to be working with? So I hope that you feel some excitement as well as a little bit of fear and trepidation. If you are feeling a lot of fear and trepidation, come and talk with Sue and talk with me. I'm really expecting people to email me. I really want any questions at all. Make sure you email me. And I'm hoping that before the end of before reselection, that I hear from everybody once, that everybody says what placements they've tried. I'd like to hear from Christchurch people too, what placements you've tried, where things are up to with you. I actually have a list of people and I'll tick you off to make sure that we've been in touch. So please do get in touch with me, and no question is too dumb, or just ask a question if you need to. Please do get in touch. I am really expecting it. So what's really important with this is that you grasp the nettle. You do this, you take that step. Because it's really important that you do that. And, you know, like I said, if you're feeling a bit intrepidation and want some support to talk it through, you're very welcome to email me and we can talk in Auckland, or email Sue. But just take that step, because it's really important that you just take that, show the initiative and take a step to make it happen. Oh yeah, email address. Yes, you're very welcome to email me and Sue Grant, which is in Christchurch, which I know you know, sgrant@laidlaw.ac.nz. So I will send you this list of potential placements. Sue and I and Rosemary are just getting it finalised in 3 weeks, and then there'll be the 3 kinds of placements, the ones anybody can contact, the ones that you need to talk with Sue or myself first, and then the do not contacts. So we'll get that, we just want to get that really finalised, and we'll send that to you, and then from that point you could start. So all the very best.